Welcome to the tea table. I am so happy you've joined me today. And we are going to celebrate another holiday. This is the month of celebrations, the month of March. Well, we're going to go far across the ocean to the land of Israel, and actually we're going to go to Shushan, where the Shushan Palace was. And it was King Xerxes, and he ruled all of the then known world. Very powerful king. And there's a tremendous book, a small book in the Bible called the Book of Esther. And it tells this wonderful story. And it's such an amazing story that it became like the Passover was when they left Egypt, a celebration that they've celebrated, all of the Jewish people have celebrated for the last thousands of years. Well, this is the same, the book of Esther and the celebration of Purim. Many people know it as the turning of the tables. Have you ever heard that expression? That's where it comes from. And I'm playing very soft Yiddish, Jewish flute and violin music. And I think it's very calming. Well, I'm dressed a little bit like Esther. I don't have a real costume. It would be so fun. But I've put something together for you. The story goes, and I know that most of you know the story. Well, before we start, have you gotten your tea yet? Okay, I'm going to show you what I have for you today. And I feel this is a royal day to celebrate a royal tea. And so all of the china is white trimmed in gold, and it's very delicate. And I have selected actually 2 cups, one for you, and I'm going to give you my favorite because you're the guest. Isn't that the most beautiful little cup? It's so delicate. It has pinks and baby blues. It's very old cup. And this is your cup. And then I chose a little German cup that is also white with gold trim. And so I think I'm going to pour out in the special cup. This is so special. And you know, when we value things, they become special, don't they? And I am always taking just a little splash of milk. Should we try? I'm sure Queen Esther had tea in the palace. The palace at Shushan had everything. Gold, jewels. The king was very, very rich. Now, I will tell you, I had originally brought, before I decided on white and gold, another cup that I'm going to show you that is royal purple. And I thought this looks so much like a royal queen. Well, I'm going to briefly tell you the story of Esther. But if I don't cover all the details, you can look it up and read it. It's a short book in the Old Testament, and it's a true story, and it's been documented. Archaeologists have found the palace of Shushan, and they have excavated. You know, Handel wrote a very famous, beautiful aria, and it's about King Xerxes. Now, in Hebrew, his name is Ahasuerus, and that's why sometimes it gets confusing. But his name in his language was Xerxes, Xerxes. And Handel wrote one of the most beautiful arias. And he wrote an opera about this, about King Xerxes. And beautiful, beautiful piece. It's one of my favorite pieces. Well, the story goes, the Jews were suffering. They were in a land that was a foreign land, and they had gone into captivity. Remember, you had the northern house of Israel was taken up to Samaria, and they went into the Sumerian captivity, and then the southern house called Judah later was taken into captivity by Babylon. And you know, Daniel, the famous Daniel in the Bible in the lion's den, he was part of that captivity too. And that was a little bit earlier than Esther. But Esther, what happened was a very wicked man named Haman had decided that he wanted all the Jews destroyed. He did not want to deal with them. They were successful, they were happy, they were prosperous, and he said, I want to get rid of them. And so he built, there was a man named Mordecai who worked for the king, and he was a Jew. And Haman mustered up all these false charges against Mordecai and was going to have him hung on the gallows. He had made gallows for him. And for you little T children, gallows are a terrible thing, but it's where they used to take, and in the Middle Ages a lot, and different times in history, when they wanted to make a public display of having someone die, they would put them on the gallows in front of everyone. It was just tragic. Well, Mordecai heard that, we have to back up a little bit, because King Xerxes had a queen named Vashti, and he had asked Vashti, he had had a big party, and he had all his people, he wanted to show off his queen because she was very beautiful. Well, he asked her to come in and she refused. Well, this humiliated him, and so he banished her from the kingdom, and he said, I need a new queen. And he told his men, go out through all the land and find the most beautiful maidens and bring them to me, and I will choose a new queen. So Mordecai, this Jewish man, had a beautiful niece named Esther, and she was an orphan, so he was responsible for taking care of her. He said, maybe God has chosen you, Esther. I'm going to send you to the palace of the king. Maybe you can win his favor and save your people. And so Esther goes to the palace of the king. This is all in the Bible, and it's a true story. And she has many, many months. They called it a purification and beautification, and they gave them like oils and beauty treatments. And then the fair maidens would come before the king. Well, Esther came before the king, and she found favor. He said, this is the most lovely, beautiful girl inside and out. He could see her character, her noble beauty and goodness, and he chose her to be his queen. And then in the meantime, Haman is stirring up, doesn't really know that Esther is related to Mordecai, and he's stirring up this rebellion to kill Mordecai. Because if they got Mordecai, then they would be able to really control the Jews and maybe get rid of them, actually. That's what they wanted to do. Terrible. Well, so the queen, she thought, what do I do? She asked her maidens, pray and fast and ask God for 3 days to help us. This was very big. In those days, the king had absolute law, absolute control, and if she were to go in and ask him a favor and he didn't like it, he could banish her and she would be gone and everything would be gone forever. Well, she prayed and her maidens, and then she decided, I will have a banquet for the king. So she went in and asked the king if she could have a banquet. And so she prepared this beautiful banquet for all the king's people to come to. All the royal aristocrats came. And then when she was in the banquet, he said, Queen Esther, you are so wonderful. What would you like? I will give you whatever you ask, up to half of the kingdom. And then she was able to tell the story. She said, oh, and also, I'm sorry, the king, this very complicated story, the king had had a dream and had not been able to sleep. He had troubled sleep. And the man, his helper there, his butler, he said, read me what's been going on in my kingdom. And so this butler came and would read, and he read about how good a man named Mordecai was, and he had done all these good deeds and had never been rewarded. The king said, my. So when Esther asked the king for the favor of saving Mordecai and told him the story, the tables turned. That's when the turning of the tables. And the king gave out a decree, all the Jews will be free. And the gallows that were set for Mordecai, they went to Haman. It was a complete turning of the tables. Fascinating story and fascinating truth that sometimes when everything looks so dark in history or things are so hard and we think, how are we ever going to get out of this? When we cry out to God and ask Him, He can turn it around, right? That's right. And many times He has. You know, there's just thousands of stories throughout history. I always think of George Washington and how everything was so hopeless in that battle, crossing the Delaware. The men, their feet were bloody in the snow. They didn't even have good boots, and how God allowed the fog and the weather to cover them, and everything turned around. And so it's a good word for us. And when Purim is celebrated, I'm wearing this because I feel like this is something Esther may have worn. They dressed with very regality and purple. This is more maroon, but purple is very associated. And I have a purple tulip and a white tulip. White for her purity and purple for her royalty. Yes. Esther is a beautiful figure and a real wonderful heroine for us to look up to, especially as women. That we never know where God may place us, and we can have good influence to save and help people. Well, I feel very close to Esther because of two reasons. My name is Susan, and in Hebrew it's Shoshana. And so the palace of Shushan means my name, Susan. It's Susa. And then, this is amazing, but in the book of Esther, it says the third month, the 23rd day, a decree went out and all the Jews were free. Well, that's my birthday, March 23rd. And I said, oh, and I've always loved liberty and freedom. And I've just taken that as my personal blessing. One other special thing happened, I can't help it, but on March 23rd in 1776, that's the day that Patrick Henry said, give me liberty or give me death. Another freedom, cry of freedom. Freedom is a bell that rings. It's a cry all across history. And it's really God's gift to His people when they walk with Him in His ways. It's a reward and it's a blessing. Yes. And I also might think I might be related to Patrick Henry because my Scottish name is Hendry from my maternal side. So these are fun little thoughts and facts. And you know, the Bible says he will give us eyes to see. And my dear friend Dawn, the most beautiful artist I've ever known, the most amazing artist, oh my goodness, she had the gift of drawing people and portraits, and they were so gorgeous. And she always told me an artist has an eye to see and a musician has an ear to hear. Isn't that good? Very, very good. Well, I didn't forget the treat, especially for my little tea kids. Now, this is what I would think Middle Eastern would be like. This very strawberries on top, and these are very hearty date and nut and all kinds of seed cookies on the left, the little ones, and the other ones are just very, very healthy. And you know, in the Bible they talk about dates and coconut and oils and mixtures, and these cookies just remind me of something from that period of time. They had really good food, you know, they were very healthy. When you go to the Middle East, any of the countries in the Middle East, oh my, you have more variety of fresh food at the market than any place in the world. I remember being in Greece and seeing dates and figs and things I had never even seen before, and all just in abundance. It's that sunshine with the misty rain that just comes up from the earth there, and oh my. So they had very, very good food and very nutritious food. And I think nutrition is very important, and our tea party should have something good and nutritious, right? Well, many years ago, I wrote a song and I called it The Ballad of Esther. And I am going to read you the words. It is actually also a nice poem. And I actually found this. This is my original piece of paper that I wrote my first poem. And this is years ago. And I sang it with my guitar. And I do have it recorded, and maybe I can find that recording and play it for you. The way my setup is here, it's not so easy for me to sing yet, but I'm working on that, okay? So here it goes. There was a maiden fair who lived at Shoshan, a Jewish maiden Esther. Her uncle Mordecai did bring Esther to the palace of the king. Though fair maidens came from many a land, Esther in her God did stand, for she feared Jehovah and did pray, and his favor found on that glad day. For the king he found her fairest of all, and crowned her queen though a stranger. She remembered too she was a Jew, and her people were in danger. Mordecai waited long at the gate to tell her of her people's fate, of cruel Haman and his evil plan to destroy the Jews throughout the land. And then this is a ballad actually, and I go into a tremolo here. Esther called the Jews to fast for 3 days, to wait upon their God and pray. Esther cried, I care not if I die, for I hope in God, I will not lie. As she stood before King Ahasuerus to plea for mercy for her people, though the gallows high for Mordecai, the king turned and they were Haman's. And then I go into, O rejoice and sing, make larger your ring, for God the great Redeemer, his salvation brought, deliverance wrought for his people. Hallelujah. And did you know that in every language, Alleluia means the same? Every language, that's one word, it means praise to God. And can you imagine how happy the Jews were? And why Queen Esther and Purim is such a special, special holiday. It goes with the calendar, and so it's different every year. This year, it started on the evening of the 16th and went through yesterday. And so I want you to honor that day. I think we should celebrate as many times and as often as we can. Well, this has been so special to have you today for tea. I feel like having a little more tea. This is so nice. And this little pot is so gentle, a pot that is built so fine. It's just, you can feel it in the china. And I like stoneware, and I like all different variety. But this is really about as fine as you're going to get. And I encourage you, you can find little china cups and saucers and teapots around. You know, the way you get an authentic English piece of china, or German, or French, or Dutch, or made in the USA, there's a lot. You actually have to go to thrift shops because these countries are not making them anymore. They outsource everything, and it may be a reproduction, but to have authentic, this is real bone china, and it's so fine and lovely. And you know, sadly, a lot of people, they're just not wanting it. So I say this is the time to get it, right? Well, this has been so nice to be with you. And I was going to show you, I have this on, but I had a shawl that is so gorgeous. To me, this is what I would imagine the colors of the temple to be, the tapestry, the red, gold, and purple. And so I just wanted to show you just the colors. I just thought they're so beautiful. And maybe I'll wear this at another tea talk, but you know, it's amazing what you can do with a shawl. A shawl makes an entire outfit. You can have I have basic black dress often and just wear my shawl and put other colors and jewelry with it. And it just all goes together. And a shawl, this is a shawl put in another creative way. And it could be used for many things. And I have some jewelry that has purple in it today. I was going to tell you because purple is a royal color, and I thought it was appropriate for Queen Esther. So, you know, I really thank you. I'm going to find something here. Okay. I just think it's been so nice to be together, and I hope you've had a wonderful week. And I encourage you, now that they're taking all these restrictions away. I went out to lunch this week with my friends. They took me out, and then I met another friend for coffee, and it was so fun. And I'm going to have a tea party very soon at my house. And I really encourage you to be as creative as you can. We're entering spring, and this is our time. Well, thank you so much. And I'm looking, I think I lost my little clip. So I apologize, but I'm going to have to stand up. and say goodbye. God bless.